Welcome to another video from Demystifying Proposals. Our mission is to break down the proposal process and make proposals make sense. In this video, we're going to cover the next level of proposal development. If you've watched Proposal Development 101, we talk there about the basics of proposal development, including color teams. In this video, we're going to talk about developing the outline, developing questions, managing the proposal team, and doing the submission. Here are some of the basics. Here are some of the basic elements of the proposal management role: scheduling and organizing color team reviews, driving the proposal schedule, including trying to get the authors to develop content in a timely fashion, working with the graphics team to get the graphics developed, working with the editing team to ensure the proposal is edited, completing desktop publishing and formatting. Sometimes that's somebody who does that for you, and sometimes you have to do that yourself. Ensuring compliance, that's your number one job as a proposal manager. And helping with resources like templates and tools for practice-led proposals. Some of the value add that proposal managers can bring to the table is providing an outline that maps sections L and M for easy government scoring. Remember, proposals are scored and not necessarily read in every detail. Also, the reminder to use the RFP's language, whether they use program or project or cybersecurity as 2 words or 1 word. It's important that you use the RFP's language in your proposal to provide that subtle understanding of the customer. You also want to work with the capture resources to understand the win themes and discriminators and proof points, and make sure that you're asking that so what question for something that you're claiming is important. So what? What does it mean to the customer? And then also working with the authors to ensure that your proposed solution comes through. You want to show understanding of the proposed work and provide a clear approach for how the company will do the work. The more value add of proposal managers is working with the authors to ensure the win themes are easy to find and easy to score. Maybe that's putting in a features benefit table if you have space for that, or at least putting in call-out boxes to make sure that your win themes are easy to find. And your proof points should not only tell the government where you've done similar work, but also why it matters for this proposal. The proposal manager will also schedule and organize color team reviews, and that should include outside perspectives, people who are not actively involved in making the decisions about this particular proposal. And the review should also use the government scoring if possible, so that the evaluation mirrors what the government will do. You also want to work with graphics to develop concise and compelling graphics. The old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, really is true. Here are a few definitions so that we're all on the same page. The proposal team includes the proposal manager, the proposal coordinator, capture manager, and authors. The business lead, which is a term we'll use often throughout these videos, maybe the portfolio lead, maybe a vice president, maybe a program manager. It's whoever will be leading the work if you win it. Now we're going to talk about proposal outlines. There's also a training video on doing outlines in and of itself, should you need a refresher on just that topic. The structure of the proposal outline and the compliance matrix starts with section L, and then section M is filtered into the section L requirements, and then section C, which identifies the work to be done, usually in a statement of work or a performance work statement, is then slotted in where it makes sense from the outline perspective. Any discrepancies between sections L and M must be addressed, as both must be included. A few other things to look for are section H for key personnel requirements, and then you want to make sure there's nothing hidden in section B, which is your CLIN structure and sometimes has some details that are important for your proposal outline. Developing a compliance matrix is the way that you confirm that your outline is correct. You can do an outline first and then a compliance matrix, or you can do the compliance matrix and then the outline. But the compliance matrix is what you will give to the evaluator so that they know what the instructions are and how L and M and C should be broken down. And that way they can check your proposal against what is required for compliance. So in the compliance matrix, you want to document the proposal instructions, things like font size and font type or font types, document types, when is the proposal due, all those kinds of things you put in the compliance matrix. Those don't go in your outline, just in the compliance matrix. And then as you do with the outline, you break down sections L and M and C. What you do in the compliance matrix is put the L elements next to the M elements. So if you're using Excel, you would put the L elements in your left cell and your M elements in the right cell so that you can see how the language is for each of those elements. If you are using Word, usually you're doing it in a table, and the same idea follows. One block has the L requirements, and the block next to it has the M requirements. If there's something in L that's not in M, make sure you include it. If there's something in M that's not in L, make sure you include it. Again, this applies to the outline as well, but you need to make sure in the compliance matrix that you reflect those differences. And then you want to break down section C. You may also want to include the deliverables against the tasks. Then you want to check your proposal outline against your compliance matrix. If you've done it right, the table of contents for the outline should essentially map to your compliance matrix with the notations in the headings, that is the section L and M and C requirements. Make any adjustments as required before sharing the outline. So it's a good idea to do the compliance matrix and the outline very early on in the process so that you can get that outline out to your authors as quickly as possible. It's also a good idea to have someone else check your outline and compliance matrix to make sure you caught everything. After all, we're only human. Proposal people tend to use those terms, section L and M and C, but we all know that some RFPs don't actually use those categories. Some customers have their own numbering structure or their own naming convention. For example, the Department of Homeland Security uses numbering in their RFPs. But there's usually something that's called proposal instructions or instructions to offers or something along those lines, and then has the instructions for fonts and number of pages and all of those things. And then there's usually something that tells you how the proposal will be evaluated, whether that's tables of excellent, very good, good, poor, and unacceptable, or very relevant, relevant, somewhat relevant, not relevant. And that's the equivalent of section M. RFPs usually include a section telling you what the work the government is asking you to do, and that's the statement of work or the PWS or what we call section C. The proposal manager is responsible for holding the kickoff meeting. Doesn't mean that we actually are the only ones involved in the kickoff. Obviously, the proposal team is involved and the capture managers, but we're responsible for scheduling the kickoff. We're also responsible for developing the proposal schedule and conducting the daily stand-ups. It's important for the proposal manager to take ownership of the proposal development process from kickoff to submission. You want to organize the kickoff within 48 hours of that final RFP release. Invite anyone who will play a role in developing content for the proposal, as well as selected leadership for their visibility into the opportunity. You can consult with the capture manager to make sure that you've invited everyone. As a reminder, you want to make sure that you invite contracts, pricing, all of the people who are not necessarily developing content for the technical proposal, but will be involved in the cost proposal and sometimes other elements of the proposal as well. Prepare a kickoff slide, complete with the opportunity overview and win strategy that the capture manager likely developed and briefed previously for this particular effort. You want to break down the RFP based on section L and M and C and anything else that may affect the outline. And then you want to brief the RFP overview at the kickoff. This is your first opportunity to get everybody who's going to be involved in the proposal on the same page as regards the requirements of the RFP. You want to develop the proposal schedule in conjunction with the capture manager, the pricing specialist for the cost volume elements, pricing spreadsheet, et cetera, and the contract specialist or whoever is going to be handling things from a contracts perspective, whether that's submission or just reviewing and signing off on the RFP. You want to brief the proposal schedule at the kickoff so the proposal team is aware of it, and then post the schedule in SharePoint or whatever proposal document repository you're using. If the proposal involves partners, there may end up being two kickoffs. Often there's an internal kickoff to include the details of staffing and pricing and contracts related items that you don't want to necessarily share with your partners. And then an external kickoff to ensure the partners understand their responsibilities during the proposal process. You want to work with the capture manager or whoever is functioning in the role of capture manager on the timing of the kickoff and who should participate. And most of the time, the capture manager should brief the opportunity overview and the win strategy. When developing the proposal schedule, you want to start with the main dates. There's the RFP drop, the questions due date, and the proposal submission date. Generally, we color code these the same for visual clarity. Then you want to add in the color team reviews. Pink team is generally in the first week after the RFP drops, depending on how much preparation you've had to do before the actual RFP came out. Red team is generally a week after pink team. Gold team is generally a week after red team. And white glove is generally a day or two before submission. If the proposal is multiple volumes, you want to give yourself more time for your white glove review and for the submission timeline. Of course, all of this depends on the actual time you have for the proposal submission. This schedule assumes a 30-day turn, which is a common, though these days often there is a multi-phase submission and then your turns may be quicker. So think about your proposal schedule with regard to where your due dates lie. Again, this proposal timeline includes a 30-day turn. If you have a faster turn than that, then you're going to need to adjust all of these timelines, but we're just trying to provide some general guidance on what proposal timelines generally look like. This is largely the same as the previous slide. It does add the green teams though, which are the review of the cost volumes and definitely are an important element of proposal management. When it comes to the daily stand-ups, you want to work with the proposal team to find a time that generally works for most people for the daily stand-ups. Some people prefer morning, some people prefer afternoon, some people like to do it at noon, particularly if they're on a customer site and they kind of take time from their lunch to do the daily stand-ups. It really depends on the proposal team, so you want to make sure that you talk that over with the team. Sometimes, depending on the criticality of the proposal, you may only meet a couple times a week instead of every day, and that's fine. So be cognizant of that when you're thinking about your schedule for the daily stand-ups. Your role as the proposal manager is to lead each daily stand-up. The capture manager should start this daily stand-up by briefing anything that's new from his or her perspective. And then you want to check in with each author about how they're doing on developing their content, whether they've developed any roadblocks that they may need to, addressed. Ask them to post their drafts every day. And then if you ask them to post their drafts, you better be reading them because that's the whole point of having them post their drafts. And then you want to check with the other leads, pricing, contracts, et cetera, to see if there's anything that they need to discuss, any roadblocks that they may be facing or issues that they need addressed as part of the daily stand-up. You may need to have 2 daily stand-ups if your subcontractors are playing a major role in our writing sections. That's because it's important for pricing and contracts to have a daily stand-up where they can talk turkey about the things that are facing, and the subs don't need to be part of those discussions. Now we're going to talk about questions development. Often the government will provide a template for questions, but if they don't, then most companies have a template to gather questions that includes things like where's the RFP section, what's the actual content or the RFP section, what does it say, and then what's your question with regard to that section. Questions are often due early in the proposal development process, so you need to get that template for questions out to the proposal team as early as possible. Be sure to include contracts, pricing, and any other functional groups in the request for questions, as well as the folks developing the technical proposal. Be sure to give a deadline for questions that's usually a couple of days before they are due to the government. This gives you time to compile the questions. This gives you time to edit the questions. This gives you time to have a vetting meeting on the questions. And you want to set up that meeting to vet the questions. That includes the proposal leadership, the capture manager, the volume leads, contracts, pricing, and the business lead. And don't forget to develop your own questions. Maybe you have a question around the outline. If the page limits are different in sections L and M, then ask a question. If the font sizes are different in different sections, generally we try not to ask a question and just make an assumption. But if you can't get clarity, then asking a question is okay. But you want to make sure that you're asking a question in the way that you're going to get the response that you want. Try to get everyone not to ask open-ended questions. For example, don't ask, which font size should we use? Instead, say, please confirm that the font size should be X. You can also use questions to try and get more pages. Sometimes that's a good thing if they only give you a short number of pages and you need to get more pages. Remember, though, that if you're going to ask for more pages, you have to give them a reason why they should give you more pages, because that's more work for them and they're not going to want to do it unless you can give them a really good reason for it. If you haven't gotten font questions or font instructions around graphics or tables, you might want to ask a question around that, because often we want to use smaller font sizes for those things. And if they don't give you that clarification in the instructions, it's usually a good idea to ask. Please also remember that the government will take the easy road. So ask your questions in a way that allows them to give as short and concise a response as possible. So you're going to set up a meeting to vet the questions. You want to send up the questions in advance of the meeting to vet them, or point everybody to where they are in SharePoint. That's an easy way to do it as well. Assume, however, that not everyone will have read the questions, but some will. And so it's important to make sure that you send them out in advance. You're going to live share the questions in the meeting and take notes on the questions that need editing. Sometimes you can do a live edit, but sometimes it's more complicated and you might just want to take notes because you can't always do the changes live. See the note on the previous slide about avoiding open-ended questions. Drive people to ask the question in a way that leads the government toward what you want the answer to be. So if you want the answer to be, I want more pages for this section, then you say, I want more pages for this section and why. Or if you want the answer to the question to be, the font size should be 11-point Arial, then ask the question that way. And that applies to all of the questions across the board. So just think about it and try and think about asking the question in a way that shows the government what you want the answer to be. Be sure not to ask questions that give away your solution, however. Remember, questions are published for all offers to see. And be sure to get consensus on the questions to be asked. That's kind of the point of the vetting meeting discussion. Sometimes people want to ask a question and other people think it's a bad idea. If you can generally get some consensus, then that's the thing to do. Also, some people, some companies like to ask a lot of questions. Others do not. We're really agnostic about it, but you do need to understand which your company might prefer. If your company is a company that prefers to ask fewer questions, then getting to consensus on which question should be asked is not only how the question should be asked, but whether the question should be asked. In most companies, it's contracts who submits the questions. So coordinate with them on the submission process. Be sure to email and talk to the contracts person in advance to make sure that they are aware of the schedule. Most contracting folks are handling a lot, so don't assume that they know when questions are coming or what the deadline is. Be sure to get the final questions to the contracts person before they are actually due, preferably at least a few hours before they're due. And be sure to provide the contact information for the question submission found in the RFP to the contracts person when you send them the final questions. They should have that information, but it's just good proposal management to make sure you and the contracts person have the same understanding. Now let's talk about submission. As we did with the questions, we're going to coordinate with the contracts lead because, again, contracts generally does the proposal submission. So you want to make sure that they're aware of the list of documents for submission, along with the timing by which the documents will be ready for them to be submitted. You want to finalize all the documents in time for submission, usually several hours in advance of the submission deadline, preferably at least 3 or 4 hours, but more if the submission is via a portal, because portal submissions are complicated and portals don't always work the way that they should. The contracts lead submits the documents by the deadline in the RFP. They BCC the appropriate staff, including the proposal manager, the capture manager, the technical lead, the business lead, and others as appropriate. You want to request a read receipt on the submission email, and you want to request a confirmation email. When you get the confirmation email, the contracts person should distribute the confirmation email when it's received to the appropriate staff, so everybody knows that the government says, yes, we got the proposal. We hope you enjoyed this video on Proposals 102 from Demystifying Proposals. If you learned something from this video, please hit the thumbs up to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell to be notified of future videos.